Ann Coulter's gone back to the United States and Canadians generally have gone back to sleep on the free speech issue, I wanted to share some thoughts with you on really what counts and what matters about free speech, and why it's ridiculous that we are not allowed to hear anything and everything we want to hear for ourselves that we might be able to hear in the United States, for instance. We're no better than the Americans. In fact, we're a lot worse. We're smug. And we think that there is something significantly different about us that makes us better than Americans. But let me point out to you a couple of obvious truths about what happened in regard to Ann Coulter. First of all, Eastern Canada is where free speech has no home, where a rabble, a mob can shout down a speaker and nobody does anything about it. But after it's all over, the president of the university says, "We're a home for free speech." Thank you, Alan Rock. The fact is, free speech has no hope as long as there is no environment of civility in which different points of view can be heard. That's a fundamental, basic truth. That's why we preserve peace and order, so that all points of view have an opportunity to be heard, debated, discussed, and perhaps rejected, perhaps accepted. But basically, it's amazing how Canadians have no confidence in their ability to discern between truth and falsehood. Why is it that we're allowed to read fiction if we can't tell the difference between fact and fiction? Why is it that we're allowed to vote for politicians who we all know lie from time to time, and some of them more than that? But we get to choose between them. We're allowed to decide between the various liars in politics. Why is it then that we are allowed to watch horror movies and crime movies? You think we can't decide not to be criminal and not to be horrible just because we see and hear things that are criminal and are horrible? That's ridiculous. So prima facie, the most obvious fact is that Canadians are trusted to decide between good and bad all the time, and so they should be. We're not children. We're not in a kindergarten here in Canada, although the University of Ottawa certainly acted like one when they shouted down and screamed and yelled and pushed and shoved and made sure that they didn't get to hear the other side of the coin. The fact is, my friends, that if we are to keep and understand the significance of free speech, we have to practice it. We have to have civility, just like they did in Calgary. If people didn't like to hear what Ann Coulter had to say, they didn't have to go. And really what they're afraid of is not that falsehood will triumph over lies, or rather, falsehood will triumph over truth. They're not afraid of that at all. They don't think it'll happen. What they're afraid of is that truth will triumph over their lies and their attitudes and their points of view, which they want to make sure no one hears anything to the contrary. That's how tyrannical minorities control vast quantities of dumb majority people who sit back and let the tyrannical little mob run wild in the street. And if the Ottawa police had any backbone, and if the University of Ottawa had any conscience about this matter, they'd be finding out who it was that organized this rabble to shout down a speaker in a university, and they'd be seeing that those people didn't have a place on the university, and if they did violent acts of crime, they should be arrested. But that's not what Ann Coulter did. Ann Coulter just wanted the right to express her opinions. Whether you like them or you don't like them, you should have heard them. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. It happened in Western Canada because we have a different attitude towards free speech. We have an attitude you've got to hear somebody before you judge them. And a lot of people don't like that. They'd like to shut up their opponent so nobody gets to know who's telling the whole truth. And that will never resolve a debate in favor of truth. It will only resolve the debate in favor of falsehoods, liars, and a screaming mob. That's not what we want in Western Canada.